Okay, first hour, Algebra 2. This should be the 15th, which is Wednesday, if I've got my days correct. And yesterday we looked at the basics of a sequence and these patterns of numbers and how to figure out what that pattern was to predict the next number in line. And what else did we do? What a term is, and also what the position of a number is, okay? So we're going to focus in on one specific type of a sequence today, and that is an arithmetic sequence. And what makes a sequence arithmetic is that you are adding or subtracting a constant value as you go across your list. So yesterday we had a couple where we added, what did we do? We added 3, then subtracted 2, added 3, subtracted 2. That's not arithmetic because you have to do the same thing all the way across. Or if we times by 2, that's not arithmetic. You have to either add or subtract. So what arithmetic means is these jumps that you make stay consistent the whole way across. Now this is one I think we had in our notes yesterday, and we looked at it and we determined that, well, we're adding 3 all the way across. Okay, all of these steps are adding 3 all the way across. That's what makes it an arithmetic. They all stay the same, okay? And in an arithmetic sequence, whatever that number is you're adding or subtracting, that is called the common difference. And it gets the symbol D. Okay? Now, the cheap way to find it, if you can't eyeball it, figure it out, is take any number in line, like the 18, subtract the number in front. If you do 18 minus 15, you get an answer of 3. If you do that anywhere in this list, like 27 and 24, subtract them, you get positive 3. But you always got to subtract the number minus the number in front. 36 minus 33 is positive 3. That's the easy way to find what your common difference is. Okay? Now, what else did we do yesterday? Yesterday we also looked at how we reference each of these numbers by the position they're in. So 15 is in the first position, so that's a sub 1, or the first term. 18's in the second, a sub 2. 21's in the third, a sub 3. And so on down the list here. Let me just write a few of them out. Okay. Actually, how many do we have? 6, 7, and 8. All right. Now, one thing we want to do today is we want to realize how this works. How does this sequence work? How do you go how do you get this 18? We'll just start there. Well, we started with 15 and we added 3. Now notice one thing about the 18. The 18 is the second number in line. How many 3's did you add? You added 1. Look at your 21. It's the third number in line. How many 3's would you have to add to 15? Because we always got to start in the same spot. How many 3's would you have to add to 15 to get to 21? You would add 2. Notice it was the third term and you added 2. So do you see a little pattern here within the pattern? 24 is the fourth number. So how many 3's do you think you have to add to 15 to get to 24? You add 3 of them all the way down the line. 27's the fifth. We add 4 3's to get there. So the way this pattern works is we always start at the same place, and then we start adding 3's. Well, how many 3's do we add? Well, it's always 1 less than whatever our position is. So by the time we got out here to the 36, if you can see that, that's the 8th term. Just tell me how many 3's you would have added. Did you say 7? Because you would do 8. You would say 8 minus 1. We would have added 7 3's, and we can write them all up here and count them. Okay? So whatever the position of your numbers is, that 33 is in the 7th spot. I may have said 33 earlier. I was talking about the 36. 33 is in the 7th spot. So that means you would add 6 3's to get there. Okay? So it's getting a little crowded here. Let me clear this off. So here's what I'm saying. Let's go all the way to the end there. Look at the 36. If I say, hey, how do you get to 36? Like you're going to give me directions. Okay, if you give directions, whenever you give directions somewhere, you always have to know where to start at. So if you said, well, how do you get to 36? You'd have to say, well, start at 15 and then start adding 3. Okay. Now, how many times will you add 3? Well, you'd have to count here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you would say, well, it's the 8th number in line, so we would add 8 minus 1 threes. Well, that means we would get 15 plus 7 times 3, 15 plus 21. You see how you get 36 out of that. Okay? So it's like you're given directions. Okay? So let's look here. Let's figure this out here. So what we want to do is, let's figure out just a general rule or formula we can follow so that we can find any number out here. And by the way, remember that when you have dot, 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 that means it continues forever with the same pattern. So if you are, like in our case, we're adding 3 as we go across here, there's no reason that when we get way out here that it would change to plus 5. It continues the whole way out. All right? And we already counted this off. That was the 8th number. Well, what if we wanted to go way out here? Find some number that's way out there. Some mystery number. Let's call it a sub n. How would you give me directions to get to a sub n? Well, you would say start at 15. Well, what's 15? That's the first number in line, a sub 1. Then what would you do? Well, you would have to know the position of the number that you want. Well, what's the position of the number that we want? It's n. So that means we would subtract 1 from that n, and that's how many of those 3's we would add, and 3 is called d. Okay? So again, how do you get to some mystery number way out there in the list, no matter what the list is? Well, you start at the first number, and then you start adding your d value, whatever that d value is. And what would that be? It would be 3, and then how many of them do you add? You always add 1 less than where you got to go. So let's say in this list here, let's say we want to go to the 20th number in line. Now we know this is 8, so that's a little bit farther down the line. So we could just start adding 3 until we got to the 20th number. We have to keep track of a lot of things to do that. Or we could just say, how do we get to the 20th number? What directions would you give me? Well, you start at the first number, which is 15. And then you're going to start adding 3. And if you go to the 20th number, you will add 20 minus 1 of those 3's, or 19. Then you just do the math. You say, well, that's 15 plus 19 times 3 is 57. And we get an answer of 72. So we would say the 20th number in line is 72, or the 20th term is 72. So we want to be able to have an understanding of how these things work so that we can predict, numbers that are way out there in our list without having to physically go in there and add 3, add 3, add 3, add 3, add 3. Okay, so let's try another one, see if we can solidify this a little bit. So let's say here's our sequence. And we take a look, and let's just figure out first off what we're doing here. Do you see it? What are we doing from one term to the next? We are subtracting 6. So one thing to notice when you subtract, what happens to your list? It's getting smaller. So what's going to happen eventually when we get out here? If we subtract 6 enough, we'll get negatives. Okay, so keep that in mind when you are subtracting. But on your homework today, you're going to have 4 problems, that's it. And you're going to have to do 3 things on each one of the 4. You're going to have to identify the first term and the d value. So we can do that right now. The first term is 50, and the d value we just did was minus 6. Now remember, on that d value, you can subtract any number minus the number in front of it. Okay? And when you do that, you will always get the same answer of negative 6. So you're going to have to find the first term and the d value. You can do that just by looking at the sequence. Then I'm going to have you find some number way out there. Let's say, we won't go real far on this one. Let's say we want to find the 15th number. So just think about it logically, like you're giving me directions, and you would say, in this list, how do I get to the 15th number? Well, I have to start somewhere. I have to start at the first number in line, 50. Then what will I do? Well, if I'm going to the 15th number, I will subtract 6, 15 minus 1 times, or 14. Then you just do the math. You say, well, that's 50 plus a negative 84. And we find out that our 15th number in line is negative 34. And we were kind of expecting to have negatives eventually when we got way out there. And we evidently went far enough to be in the negatives. So try your homework. Again, you'll just recognize the first term, the d value, and then you'll have to find some future number in this list and just talk your way through it just like I did. Give yourself directions. Always start at the first term, and then always start adding or subtracting whatever you need to do one less time than what your position is. And I give you that formula that you can fill in the pieces on to do your homework. Okay, now I need you to post your homework, the picture. Let's go by 8:30 tomorrow, okay? Now these notes and homework are short, quick, so you should be able to get it all done, say in a half an hour, half the time we would have been if we were in class, and then you can have the rest of the day to get to your other work and get to whatever else you need to get done. But make sure you post that picture of the homework before 8:30 tomorrow, and you will get full credit. And again, I'm not checking it for right or wrong, I'm checking it for participation. And at 8:30 I'll post the answer key. So that's why I want your picture posted before then, so I can see your work and see that you're doing all right. And if we got problems, I need to reteach something, I can. Okay? So have a good day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.